Hey guys, do you know what month it is? That's right, it's May. Do you know what day it is? That's right, the 4th! It's that time of year when Star Wars channels feel like they have to pander to their audience. That Star Wars channels try to make more YouTube money. That time of month when people pretend like they give a fuck what day it is. It's the day we can all get our Star Wars geek on, and for this 4th, let's see if the Force is with us when we break down Ahsoka versus Darth Vader.
You suck!
Okay, now that I got that out of my system, the breakdown between Ahsoka and Vader will be more a discussion on the event itself versus a blow-by-blow. I mean, I'm going to attempt to do a blow-by-blow, but I may come out of the fight ever so often just to try to describe what's going on here, to get a little background to it. So with that out of the way, let's just get into it.
Perhaps I was wrong.
It wouldn't be the first time.
It was foretold that you would be here. Our long-awaited meeting has come at last.
While I'm known for Trek, many would be surprised to know that my first passion was actually Star Wars. When I first saw Ahsoka, I could not stand this character. But honestly, she has come to be my favorite in the franchise itself. And while doing research into her fighting patterns and her fighting style, I found something really curious, something that is a, oh yeah, that makes sense kind of way, but not something I thought about when I was watching the fight. And the simple truth is that during this fight, you can really see Anakin's influence in Ahsoka's fighting style. He was training her to fight opponents both more powerful than she was, and that were infused with the dark side. During the Clone Wars, Anakin would, ironically, have taught Ahsoka what she needed to know to defeat Darth Vader. Let's go on to the battle proper. We begin with Ahsoka confronting Darth Vader, and of course, Vader attempts to seduce Ahsoka to the dark side. He would tempt her to join him and for her to give up all of the remaining Jedi. Now, Ahsoka would claim that there are no Jedi left, or at least she didn't know of any.
Our long-awaited meeting has come at last.
I'm glad I gave you something to look forward to.
We need not be adversaries. The Emperor will show you mercy if you tell me where the remaining Jedi can be found.
There are no Jedi. You and your Inquisitors have seen to that.
And you know, she's not necessarily lying here. They could all be dead as far as she knows. Though, to be fair as Fulcrum, she would know where Force-sensitive children were, so she would still have something valuable that Vader would want. Ultimately, after the barbs go back and forth, Ahsoka would lament the quote-unquote death of her master, Anakin Skywalker, and threaten Vader. Darth Vader would of course retort that she was not acting like a Jedi, and she would say the famous words, "I am no Jedi."
My master could never be as vile as you.
Anakin Skywalker was weak. I destroyed him.
Then I will avenge his death.
Revenge is not the Jedi way.
I am no Jedi.
And with that, she would rush Vader. Starting out in this battle, she would use an aggressive technique, and this is one that is common for Ahsoka. She would use her athleticism, speed, and inertia in an attempt to overwhelm Vader. Running at full speed, she would jump with an aerial kick, then attempt several jabs, and ultimately duck under an attack from Vader so that she's on his backside and use the Force to push him, to knock him back. In the first flurry, you can see that Ahsoka is expending a lot of energy, and honestly, this is just to keep him off guard, to attempt to stay on the offensive, something she would be unable to keep up in the long term. But again, she would attempt to stay on the offensive, as I stated, and she would leap into the air and strike from above in an attempt to end the battle swiftly. Vader would of course blade block her, allowing Tano to use the inertia and bounce away from him, but unfortunately, this is when she loses the initiative. The failed strike would give Vader the opening he needed, and he would strike down upon her, forcing her to bring her blades up just to block him. And from this point on, Tano is playing fully on the defensive. Honestly, she's barely able to prevent herself from being struck by Vader as he constantly pushes the attack forward. You begin to see her strain after this, only blocking his attacks and not using her agility. This is most likely due to fatigue after her initial attack and being under constant barrage. As I've been alluding to, this is the ultimate flaw in Ahsoka's training. From all the research I've done, it would appear that Ahsoka prefers to use the lightsaber form 4, Ataru, and she likes to use it extensively. Though, while using Ataru, we do see that she expands by using Jarkai, which is kind of a way of melding Ataru with kinetic and high-paced energy. And what we're going to see almost immediately is that when she's facing an opponent she can't defeat easily, she'll fall back to Form 5, which is Jim So, which is similar to Jar Kai in that you use a power attack, but then would immediately fall back into a defensive position if that fails. But these forms come at a price of exhaustion and fatigue, and it would be this exhaustion and fatigue that happened while she was fighting Vader. He would constantly hit back at her, constantly attack, and you would see as she's being backed against a ledge that she's barely even able to block his attacks at this point. Now, taking a look at this section of the battle, when it comes to what was used by Darth Vader, my money is on Makashi. When we look at his attacks, it seems like he is more focused on dueling with his saber than fancy tricks. Though I will admit, at some points it would appear he also uses Jim So. If you do more research on Vader, this would seem counter to what we see Vader use in the future and what novels would tell us, or how we see him even use combat in the prequels. You could explain this away in the fact that he trained Ahsoka, that he would use these two techniques knowing that she would tire very easily, which, if we're honest, it worked. So I mean, you gotta give the guy props on that, right? And ultimately it would have seemed as he killed her, again knocking her off a ledge, her falling to her death. Though, if you know anything about Tano, you know that she could not be that easily killed, so she of course would come back, catching Vader off guard and connecting with a strike, piercing his mask. Another brief interlude would happen as Ahsoka seems like she'd be able to get through to Anakin for just the briefest of moments. Though this did feel in vain as Vader wouldn't be swayed, ultimately Anakin was gone, at least as far as Ahsoka could reach him. And while Ahsoka was attempting to force an ally Ezra back out of the temple, Vader would strike. In a strange move, Ahsoka would turn her back to Vader and bring her lightsabers up behind her. When I looked at this seems completely impractical and would remove a lot of her strength. It would make it easy for Vader to defeat her. Also, it seems like she had more than enough time to actually face him and bring up her lightsabers to block him versus turning her back. I mean, it doesn't look as cinematically good, but it would be the way to stay alive. But it is what it is, I suppose. The fight honestly wouldn't last much longer, as she would keep Vader's focus on her, falling back away from her friends. This would of course be a diversion so they could get away. And in what seems like a stupid move, she would bring her lightsabers down into the ground, causing the ground to crack and Vader to fall. Though, if not for Ezra, and that's a long story I'm not even going to get into, Vader would have successfully struck her while she was bringing down her lightsabers. He would have hit her with a lethal blow nonetheless. The last move was confusing for me. She could have done the exact same move, but in a way that he wouldn't have been able to strike her. But then again, Ezra couldn't have saved her life, so I guess there's that, right? And there is something else that may have played a role. I mean, they were at the Malachor Sith Temple, not to mention that Vader was coming to the battle fresh while Ahsoka had already been in multiple battles before this one. Now, there is a concept of a Force Nexus, and the Nexus can be based on the location, a place that would resonate either with the light side of the Force or the dark side. It is possible that the temple was infused with the dark side and thus would weaken any light side user, and also empower any dark side user. Now, this is speculation on my side, but it would explain how Ahsoka was so easily defeated. Though, to be honest, I do know that Vader would be more powerful than her, and that it probably would have went the same way regardless of where they were, so it's up to your interpretation, I'd guess. Ultimately, the battle would be a great bookend. It would go from a master and his Padawan to a Sith versus what I would consider someone on the level of a Jedi Knight. From acquaintances to friends to family, ultimately to bitter enemies. But those are my thoughts. What are yours? Let me know in the comments below and I'll see you on the next Lore Reloaded.